Hello and welcome to the Lane 9 podcast. My name is Ben Weissel, and joining me today, we have a very special guest, two-time NCAA champion from Stanford, Kai Robinson. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So, obviously, coming off those two titles from this past outdoor season, we'll get into that in a bit. But I do want to kind of talk about how you started with the sport growing up in Australia. What kind of drew you to running initially?
Initially there was like a hatred towards running. It's kind of ironic, but basically we had this director of cross country and track and field at our school who'd come around to different classes and pick out students that he thought could be athletes. And unfortunately, I was one of those targeted athletes, and he managed to convince my parents to basically get me to show up to training on Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings at some ungodly hour before school. And when you're a young teenager, that makes you start to hate the sport. And I guess I had this two coaches who kind of taught me that there was more to it, and like you could get some enjoyment out of this, and basically told me I had a future in the sport and I could go to the US, go to a great institution, and essentially set myself up for the rest of my life using running as like that catalyst to take me places. And so, you know, I started to get some success, and the more success you get, the more you start to enjoy it, which is, you know, pretty good. And so that's sort of how I got into it. And then, reached out to different coaches in the US, managed to talk to Rick at Stanford, and he offered me a position and took it. And I mean, I was just talking to my parents the other day, and they're like, "Are you glad you got on that plane to go to the US?" And I was saying, this is the best decision I've ever made in my life. So rest is
Yeah,
history.
that's awesome. So were you interested in any other sports growing up, or and that was running was pulling you away, or were you just not interested in at first running at all?
I did just about every sport that I
Okay.
could do, sort of at my high school. I mean, my dad's a tennis coach. I played soccer growing up from the moment I could walk till the moment I graduated high school. You know, cricket, volleyball, just about everything except for swimming. I was pretty well, not good at necessarily, but I was able to do.
That seems to be the prototypical running story. I know that's how it was for me. I tried everything. I wasn't bad at probably similar to you, but I just wasn't obviously as good at running, and that's ultimately what kind of keeps you with it is if you're really good at something. So you mentioned Stanford. What drew you to the program? I like you said you reached out to other coaches. Were there any other schools that you were kind of considering during the recruiting process?
Yeah, I mean, there was two ways I saw myself going into America, and it's a pretty, you know, different path that I could have taken. And so on one side, I really wanted to prioritize my academics. That's
Hmm.
obviously one of the main draws of Stanford. And I mean, weather's a pretty big thing for me. Like I've never lived in snow, and so I didn't want to go necessarily to somewhere really cold and be miserable. I'm sure some people can handle that, but I can't. And so for me, it was essentially, am I going to go to college and get the most out of that life academically, or am I going to go to college and have fun for 4 years and be like a partier and you have running on the side? And so I'm glad that I was able to prioritize both academics and running, and I feel like that got the best out of me, especially going to Stanford. And there's other great schools that I looked at that at the end of the day I wasn't able to take a visit to any of them because of COVID and all that. It was especially hard getting out of Australia, and so I trusted both my coaches. They both went to Boise State some years ago, and they said if you get an offer from Stanford, like you got to take it. Like these things don't come around very often, and I trusted them, and thank God I did.
Yeah, it seems like it's worked out great. How is it like you said, Stanford's a great academic school. What is it like balancing the academics and the athletics at the same time? Like you said, you're obviously trying to prioritize both, but that can be difficult at times.
Um, I think the difference between Stanford and some of the Ivy Leagues is Stanford can be as hard as you make it to be,
Okay.
whereas Ivy Leagues like Harvard, I've heard like those guys like they're the smartest of the smartest. Like they, no matter what they do, like it's going to be tough for them. And so it's something where as I've started to run better, um, I feel like almost my workload has become a little bit easier because you know I don't I don't want to necessarily be planning for both plan A and plan B of running or going into the workforce, and so that shift away from academia has almost helped me with my running. And I mean, I'm still in a major that's gonna have the opportunity to make me money down the road. Like it's not gonna go away, and I say easy just because for some of the guys like that obviously get into Stanford, you're smarter than some people, and so yeah. But at the same time, like some of the guys on our team make it extremely hard, but for myself, it's something where I'm starting to focus on running and dialing back on the academic workload.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great, and obviously, I think I remember reading stories about Grant Fisher when he was kind of going into his last year at Stanford, kind of the similar kind of mindset of kind of throttling back a little bit with the academics, moving maybe some classes to the summer in preparation for his final season, and then going pro. So I mean, I think that's great that you're able to do that at Stanford. Let's kind of transition to the track. So you get to Stanford. What was kind of like one of your first races where we like to call it your NCAA moment, where you're like, oh man, this is like a different level. These guys are good. What was that race for you?
I mean, firstly, coming onto the team, my
Hmm.
whole goal was let's not be the slowest guy here. Like let's beat one person. Like there's a huge step up from high school into college, and so my whole thing was, I don't want to be the weakest link, and I wanted to like prove myself on this team. And I remember thinking by the end of my fourth year, like I want to be in that top five. I want to be scoring for these guys. Like they're going to be my brothers essentially. And so first race, I get the call up. It was pretty like soon after we got to campus, and it was a Florida State race. I was put in the B heat, and we had 7 guys in the A heat, and 2 of us were in the B heat, and I think I ended up getting fourth in that race. Ran like 25 minutes, and I looked at just some of the times of our teammates in that first heat, and they were running 2 minutes faster than me, and I'm like, oh gosh, like this is a big gap. And so that sort of drills in that realization of how daunting it can be, that step towards the next level. And I guess I just put my head down. I managed to beat the other guy on my team, and I was like, okay, that's one down. Like, let's go get another one at the next race. And next race, I was supposed to be in the B heat. I think it was in Las Vegas, and at the last second, they allowed one extra person to hop into the A race, and I was selected, and again managed to beat I think one other guy on the team, and I was close to another one. And it's sort of those like little steps that you make. And then like Pac-12's had probably one of the best breakthrough races of my life, and since there I thought, hey, like I know I had this 4-year plan to break into the top 5, but what if I can do it in my freshman year? Like that's insane. And like we had Cole and Thomas who were still running better than me, but those guys like lift you up too. And we joke of how we had one of the smallest classes that like recruiting
Mhm.
wise, but the 3 of us can get more out of it than say a larger class can.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the best classes that we've seen for a while, despite, like you said, being a small number. And how was it? I mean, obviously you didn't have a frame of reference for it before, but kind of being your first year as a freshman, going through like all the COVID protocols and like those races, like it was just a very different year that year because it wasn't a normal nationals. Things were just a little off. Was it, now that you've kind of seen it, I guess, more normal? What was that experience like?
Looking back on it and like reflecting, I'd almost say that was nice in a way because it transitioned me from that like Australian high
Hmm.
school to American college, and so it helped. Like my first quarter was online in Australia, and then my next one was online with one class in person in the US, and then finally I started to get some classes in person, and then next year like all of them were, and so it sort of eased out that transition phase. And for me, I guess looking back, like that might have helped. At the same time, though, it's like I missed out on some of those freshman experiences that some guys get. So, I'll never know meeting your random roommate and talking to all the different people and networking like in your hallways. And it's like, oh well, but at the same time, it's like those are some things you'll never like get to go back and experience. So
Yeah, it's once in a generation kind of thing where it was obviously such a unique event. Yeah, and it is a shame that you didn't get to experience that, but I think that is a good point of being able to kind of transition a little bit more easily into everything. Like I'm sure the races were a little bit smaller, there was less people out there. I'm sure it was a little bit more of a easier introduction. Let's fast forward though to just this from a few weeks ago, when you won your first NCAA titles in the 5K and 10K. How did you feel going into these outdoor championships, maybe compared to past championships or like even this past indoor national championships?
I think our outdoor season probably went almost exactly how we wanted it to go. Like after indoors, we had that vendetta. Like we are better than
Yeah.
what we showed in Albuquerque, and so with the exception of maybe one race where we planned on running like the world standard and paces just didn't happen and ended up running a regionals queue and essentially jogging the whole way. Like I feel like the season went exactly how we wanted, and so going into nationals, it was a conversation with Charles, like, hey, like we have the chance to go win this. Like we always say, like, wouldn't it be crazy if we go 1 and 2 and like able to celebrate together? But it's something that we say, but it's we don't necessarily like truly believe it. And so, I mean, the 10K, like we always thought that's Charles's race. Like
Hmm.
I knew he was better than me at that, and I was better than him at the 5K. Like I had the short speed and he had the long speed, but thankfully for me, it was a kick race, and so I was able to bring it home and get that advantage over him. But at the same time, like finishing 1 and 2 with your teammate and your best friend, there's no words to describe it.
Yeah, that's an awesome feeling. And I mean, you say it was a kick race. It was still pretty quick, and like in the Austin heat. How I know you kind of, I think in one of your post race interviews you mentioned you're a little bit more used to running in those hot conditions. Do you think that was helpful, or do you think there was any other factors now looking back with a little bit more perspective that really drove you towards that 10K win in particular?
I mean, I don't think the heat was helpful. I just think it affected other people more so
Right.
than myself, which I mean, in a way, does help me. But I feel like our fitness, we never really got to run a fast 10K this season. But
Hmm.
for Charles and I, like we were saying afterwards, like we thought we went out fast, but then we thought it really slowed down, and like we were running 68s for
Yeah.
the majority of it. But to us, we were thinking like, hey, we can go out there and run 66s for however long, and that's comfortable for us. So 68s to us felt like it was a sitting kick race, and I mean laps 4 to go and 3 to go were both 68s again. So to me, I see that as okay. Like we're not grinding it out from 2K out from a mile out, which is nice for me.
Well, and that's a sharp contrast to what the 5K was, and it went out really slow, but then Nico Young obviously made that big move with about a mile to go. and you kind of made the decision to hold back a little bit. What was kind of going through your head there as you were kind of letting him go a little bit, and then obviously you were able to close exceptionally well with the rest of the pack?
Um, I mean, for me, we obviously knew that there was two ways in our eyes that race panned out. Like either someone takes it from the gun and it's going to be fast the whole way, and then we saw Nico making a move from 2K a mile out, and
Hmm.
that was in our eyes his best chance at winning. I think that's probably how he saw it too, and unfortunately for him, I think the heat got to him a little bit, but anywhere else, and that could have absolutely worked for him. And so the other opportunity was it's going to be a slow race, and we could see the likes of Brian Fay or someone waiting to the last minute and storming past and making a statement with 400 to go. And after the 10K, yeah, we felt great, but at the same time, like I remember on our warm up, Charles was saying like we can go back and do this again, like we can do this. And I was remember thinking, I'm sore, like my calves. I don't think my calves can do this again. And happened to get to the front of the race, and I'm like, yeah, I'm slowing this down. Like I don't want a fast time. Like I don't necessarily care if I run 15 minutes or if I run low 13s. And got to the front. I said like in the interviews, like you guys want to slow it down, I can keep slowing it down. And eventually someone else wanted to take over but didn't want to pick it up, and I'm like, even better, like this suits me. And mile to go, Nico makes his move, and it's a real big move. And I remember thinking like I have to go with him, like I have to control this, and he just kept getting away from me. And I'm like, oh, I can't do this. Like I'm gonna absolutely blow up with 800 meters to go if I try hang with him for a mile at what was essentially 4 flat pace for the mile. And I remember I started to get dropped. Like Nico opened up a gap, and then people started overtaking me. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, like counted, and I saw 8 people had overtaken me, and I was number 9. I'm like, I got to score. Like our team's performing really well. Like I didn't think we had a chance of podiuming, but I thought like let's try finish as high as we can and exceed expectations there. And next thing I know, the pack of 8 that just overtook me start coming back, and I'm just hanging off the back, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of nice. And 500 meters to go, I just remember thinking, this is the exact same position you were in the 10K. Like, let's see who has it in the 5K. And I made my move, and no one went with me. I thought someone would have had to, and I remember just thinking, with 200 meters to go, like someone's got to be on your shoulder. Like you just got to kick. Like this is the easiest it's going to come to you at this level. Like you're never going to get another opportunity like this. And was able to hold off the chasers. And again, Charles ended up finishing 6th. We did really good as a team. We got 3rd overall. And again, it's like something where we were never seen as a team that was able to podium, yet alone finish 3rd, like at NCAAs. And so that was a really nice feeling. And it extends out to the whole team. Like thankful for Doty for getting us all those points in the 200 and the 100. And it's something special that we can celebrate together and not just individually.
Yeah, it was an incredible achievement for you guys to finish third with 3 guys, right? And I mean, to be able to do that is amazing. It was funny when you were saying it was a very similar situation to the 10K. I felt like at 500 or 600, I was like, oh, okay. I think I already know how this race is going to end. It was like your turnover, you looked great compared to everybody else, and it really was amazing to watch that and just be like, I'm pretty sure we've already seen this, and it's going to replicate. Is that you kind of hinted at this earlier, but is there a particular event that you favor on the track? Is it the 5K?
I think it's a 5K. I mean, I've had success obviously in the 10K. I've gone to like the Commonwealth Games and
Hmm.
raced there. I've even started to dabble in the 1500 a little bit again this season. I feel like that was probably what I did most in high school, just as
Mhm.
most kids do the mile over here. And so I feel like, I want to try some of the 15s some more. Like I lost to Nathan Green and in the 1500 at Pac-12s, and he went on to win NCAA. So I'm like, oh, I kind of want to get revenge. And if I can get revenge over him, then what's to say I can't do it over everyone else? And it's something that I'll have to maybe explore a little bit next year. But as of right now, it's a focus on the 5K and moving forward from here. Let's get the 5K down first, and then we can start expanding to other events.
Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, you ran a good mile this indoor season. And then, yeah, I was looking through your results and I was like, oh, yeah, you finished second to Nathan Green, the NCAA 1500-meter champ. Like, if you're going to lose somebody in that event, that's a good one, too. You didn't mention in all of that the steeplechase, where you have 8:32 PR. I know you had a little bit of a bad experience at Pac-12s in 2021, where you got spiked a little bit. Is it some of the bad experiences there kind of holding you back, or is it just you don't like it as much as the flat events?
I think the getting stepped on in Pac-12s in 2021, that's probably a core reason. And so, going over the barriers at regionals right after that, and then at NCAA is like, it's daunting. And I said to my
Hmm.
coach, like, after that, like, hey, I know I got sixth in the NCAA as a freshman and the steeplechase, but I don't necessarily know if I want to do that again. And it's something where I remember having a conversation with Josh Schumacher, who was on the team, a few
Hmm.
years ago, and he said, like, you have the potential to, never have to run over a barrier again. Like, you're good enough to go over the flat stuff. And I'd say there's more attraction from the flat stuff. I feel like the steeples almost looked down upon. I don't necessarily know why it is, but some people like see it as a Mickey Mouse event, and so rather than necessarily trying to change that and promote it myself, I feel like I wanted to prove myself in another event, and happened to be the 5K. And yeah, I guess had a conversation with my coach where he said I had to run a specific time in the 5K, and it was kind of outlandish at the time. And then I ended up managing to do it at NCAA indoors my sophomore season, and it was like, hey, like, I didn't have to do the steeple anymore. And he wasn't too happy with that. Like, he was still like, you can score points, like, let's do it. And I almost said, like, that season, like, I raced Pac-12s and big meet and got points in the steeple, but this year I said to him, like, I think, like, I have a better chance at scoring in 5K, 10K. And
Hmm.
if I necessarily go out and do some hurdle practice and some steeple practice, I feel like that might take away from what I could gain over the flat stuff. And so, unless I was really prioritizing, say, a 5K, 3K steeple double, then I didn't see a need to do any hurdle work. And so, this last season, I think I went over barrier once or twice, and that was to essentially teach some of the young guys how to do it. And after that, I said, from now on, I'm just a coach. I'm not jumping over or into a water jump anymore. And I think it's worked out.
Yeah, yeah, I think you made the right decision. I know we had talked about on this site a few times about you being kind of like this dark horse over the last 2 years in the steeplechase, of being like, hey, if he decides to compete it, obviously you've had great success in that event. You've done great in the flat 3K indoors. But obviously, I think what you've shown in the 5K, 10K, I think you made the right decision. Let's rewind a little bit back to this past fall and this last cross country season. Obviously a lot of highs and lows for you guys. I mean, Nutty Comb was obviously a great run for the you and for the team. Whereas NCAA is maybe not living up to your full expectations. Talk me through kind of the different wave of emotions you guys were feeling throughout the fall.
Um, I mean, for me, I obviously made my debut that season at Nutty
Hmm.
Comb. We'd come off Cowboy Jamboree performing really well,
Yep.
and we had so many guys on the team who looked not just like a promising 4 and 5, but 6 and 7.
Hmm.
And so, Nutty Comb, we come away with the team title over what was essentially a nationals field. And Pac-12s, we scored, I think, the lowest just about of all time, with the exception of when it was like the Pac-8.
Yeah.
And so we were like, this is our best chance. Like, this is our opportunity. Like, let's go out and show them what we can do on the like national stage. And with the exception of Charles, I don't think anyone necessarily raced how they wanted to go. And you know, I said coming into the season, when we sit down with our coach and we discuss like what do we want to take away from the season, what's our goals, and I remember saying like I want to go top three, and I want at least one other Stanford shirt in that top three with me. And I said I didn't care the order. It's just I want to be able to cross that line, score as little points for the team as I can. And come NCAAs, there was obviously that breakaway pack of three, and I remember just thinking they're coming back. There's no way they don't. Like, I remember racing here 2 years ago, and
Hmm.
you can't make that move here. Like, I remember Kiptu did it on Mance, and
Yeah.
Mance was patient and grinded it out and eventually caught him. And so that was exactly where my head was. And I think Isaiah Rodriguez and I both led that chase pack for the majority of the race, and it it took away from me, especially over the last hill. And I feel like that's was detrimental. Like, if I just sat in and raced it, I think I probably could have performed better, like got a little bit higher in those single digits. And at the end of the day, it wouldn't have done anything for the team, because unfortunately the rest of our guys all had not their best races, and you know little injuries here. Some of the like someone got the flu. It was something that hurt a lot. And hopefully next year we can get into that same position and perform on the day. But as of right now, like reflecting on that was a tough loss. But thankfully, again, we had Charles come away with the win, which was the silver lining. Which obviously we want to be able to celebrate as a team, but we gotta take the wins when we get them, and be happy for him for doing the best the Stanford athletes ever done, an NCAA cross country champs.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I feel like you're selling yourself a little short. You still had a great run at NCAAs. I mean, top 10 is, I mean, nothing to be too upset about. I can understand, though, obviously wanting to push forward. So maybe this coming fall, and you kind of hinted at it, wanting to take that next step. So Charles obviously decided to go pro, and he's going to be with the Bowerman team. What are you guys looking forward to this fall with like the young twins coming in? What are your kind of expectations for this coming fall? And maybe your reaction, I guess, to Charles going pro as well.
I mean, firstly, like I'll address Charles. Like, we knew about that pretty early on, that he
Okay.
wasn't returning next year. Like, he told myself, like our coach, and a couple of the guys on the team, like, hey, like I want to go to Bauman. Like, I don't think I'm going to be coming back next year. And it's tough because we obviously have those ambitions to go out and win that team title, and for him, that's the only thing that's
Hmm.
missing on his resume. And obviously, it's sad to have your first place finisher not return, but it leaves a gap for other people to step up and fill in. And so obviously I'll be trying to fill in that spot. We've got other people who will be trying to fill it in as well on our team. And I don't necessarily want to go and put pressure on our guys. Like, yeah, the Youngs are some of the best recruits that you know college has ever seen, but at the same time, like, I don't necessarily know if I want to go put all that pressure on them. Like, hey, you guys have to score so little points for us to have a chance. Like, I just want them to go out and develop and essentially get the best out of college that they can do in 4 years. And if that means scoring as little points as possible at NCAAs, then I'm definitely not going to complain, and I'd love that. But at the same time, we've got so many other names on this roster that can also fill in those spots if need be, and hopefully get us back onto that podium and you know, a better color of bronze or silver or gold.
Absolutely. Was it a surprise when the Youngs committed, or what was your reaction there? Because I mean, obviously Nico is at NAU, and I can speak for myself, thinking that's kind of where I assumed that they would land, or even maybe UCLA following their high school coach. Was it? What was your reaction to their commitment?
Well, obviously we had them on a visit. I was one of their hosts, and so we had those conversations like, where do you want to be like
Hmm.
in your career? And we obviously we had that coaching change before I came in, and so there was a little bit of shift in how Stanford's team dynamic was, and I feel like we'd proven, the new coaching staff
Hmm.
were were very good after my sophomore year, and so I feel like that was very influential. Obviously, Stanford's got that pull that other places don't necessarily have, and so I think they also wanted that. And you know, from their visit, we thought we were in a very good place. Like we really liked them. It seemed like they really liked us, and yeah, like their brother goes to NAU. At the same time, like he has the opportunity to go pro at any stage, and so I think that plays a little bit of factor. Like they're not going to be with their brother for all 4 5 years, however long they're in college, because he could leave at any point. And again, UCLA, like they can obviously stay with their high school coach, and that's been obviously working for them. And so it's something where I'm very grateful that they chose to come to Stanford, because now we boost our roster, and I'll have extra people to train with and learn from, because we still learn from the young guys, and hopefully we can be a role model for them and mentor them and keep that keep that tradition going, and develop that roster and keep it at that high level that Stanford's been at for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a huge addition, and I thought it was great that you guys were able to get them. All right, a few quick last questions for you. So this past indoor season was kind of chaotic for you. You were obviously started at BU, ran that great race in the 5K, and then I think you run a 3K right after coming back from World Cross, or right before. And then you obviously had World Cross where you're representing Australia. So what was all of that like, trying to fit all that in and then come back for nationals? Like you said, you didn't necessarily feel like you guys had your best performances, but I mean, that it just seemed like a lot to try to get in those few months.
Yeah, I mean, BU right after cross country was a nice little redemption. Like it was
Hmm.
kind of that, hey, like you are still there, you are still one of the best in the country, and I was able to prove it on that day and run 13:11, like all-time PR for myself. And that gave me a lot of confidence going into a break, unfortunately for us. And so took that break over that Christmas period and came back, and I was only in a few weeks of training, because I had raced BU compared to the other guys who'd just taken time
Hmm.
off after cross country, and came out, ran that fast mile, and thought this is going to be my season. Like if we're able to open up with 3:55 and
Yeah.
we had other guys run 3:56, 57, 58, like this is going to be a great season for us. And didn't have the best race, like at Arkansas a few weeks later. Ended up going back to Australia and sort of switching the focus to cross country midway through the season, which obviously aerobically training for a 10K is very different to a 3K or a 5K or a mile
Hmm.
indoors. And so that little shift, I'm sure looking back, wasn't the best move and certainly didn't help me, but at the same time it got me, that world class experience that I feel like will help me in the long term. And I remember a week after racing at Bathurst, the hardest cross country course I've ever done in my life. We were up in UW trying to qualify for the 3K, because I hadn't done that yet, and was able to turn on the jets, run a 7:42, and qualify. But I feel like that also took a little bit out of my legs. And 2 weeks later we had NCAAs, and unfortunately on that day, it didn't pan out for any of the guys we got to that level, and so that one hurt. Obviously spirits were pretty low on that flight back, but we got to take that and use it as inspiration for the next stage, and that was outdoors, and short term memory.
Yeah, I mean, you guys certainly bounced back, and I thought that 7:42 coming a week after your cross country race was one of the more impressive performances of like the whole year because I had we were talking about it. We're like, is he going to qualify for the 3K? Because like, is he going to try to run another one after cross and like right before NCAA's? And for you to be able to like recover like that and run that fast of a time, 7:42 was really really impressive in my mind. So, I mean, you mentioned obviously getting to run against a world class field for World Cross. You just ran Diamond League this past week. What was that like? And then you mentioned that you run in Commonwealth and World Championships. What have all those experiences been like running against some of the best in the world?
Um, it's it's obviously a step up. It's almost like that step from high school to college, where
Hmm.
you're one of the best coming out of high school, but then going this next step, you're essentially a nobody again, and you have to rebuild yourself up to become that somebody, to become one of the best. And so I remember world champs for track in Oregon, like going out there, I was 41 of 42 in the field, and I remember thinking, hey, like no one knows who I am, like out here, like it doesn't matter if I come last, but ideally I just want to beat two people and finish better than I was positioned, and had one of the best races of my life. And I remember going out to my coach after that, and he's always got something to say, like, you should have done this, you should have done this, even if I win a race in the NCAA. And I
Hmm.
remember him coming up to me and saying, you raced that perfectly. Like that was the best you could have done on that day, and you went out and did it. And I remember thinking, like, that's a huge confidence boost. Like, some of the guys I was racing are like idols of mine. And so to
Hmm.
be able to go out there and perform on that stage was certainly a big step in the right direction for me. And same with Commonwealth Games, same with World Cross. Like, you're out there racing the best of the best again, and you can see why they're the best of the best, because obviously they're smoking me by a fair bit. And going to Diamond League, it was pretty different, because I feel like it's a smaller field. People start
Hmm.
to recognize your name, especially after coming off NCAAs, and so had a few more eyes on me, and I could feel the pressure was a little bit higher. Obviously, there's so many people who are like interested in talking to you and getting to know you and trying to, you know, see where you're trying to go in the future. And so that was a little bit stressful, but at the same time, it's something that's coming, and is in the sport. And so it's just a great experience to get to dabble into that world, and hopefully I'll be able to go back and race a little bit better again, and keep my name on those start lists.
Absolutely. And last question. I mean, you mentioned obviously staying in that world. Is turning pro kind of on the radar for maybe after this year or in the next like few months? Like what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's obviously my dream. It's been my
Yeah.
dream since coming to college, and I've put myself in a pretty good position that opportunity is there, and something where, in 12 months' time, I see myself in a different singlet to,
Hmm.
let's say, a Stanford one, and hopefully that's on a pro scene and for the team that I want to compete for the most. And I guess we just got to stay healthy these next 12 months and keep producing those performances to get myself in the best position to get the most out of it in the future.
Absolutely. And yeah, you've certainly done a great job of that over this past year, and I'm sure you will continue to do so. We'll be keeping a close eye on you and Stanford this fall, and then you guys on the track as well. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we wish you the best of luck moving forward.
Thank you very much.